Mental Health Monday
on Radio City Talk
with Mick Coyle.
Tackling the stigma.
Radio City Talk.
Welcome to Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. Really action-packed programme today when it comes to mental health because it's the start of Mental Health Awareness Week. Now, people who've been listening to the programme for a long time will know that we have been campaigning a lot when it comes to mental health, campaigning to make it a mainstream issue, to tackle the stigma and fight prejudice around mental health. And I'm very pleased to say that actually we've now got wider support coming on board from our wider Bauer family. Bauer is the group that sort of owns Radio City and Radio City Talk. It's got magazines, TV stations, all kinds of different things, other radio stations right around the country. And today we're launching a campaign to get a mental health first aider in every workplace and college. It comes after more than half of people questioned in a survey said they've experienced a mental health issue. In fact, more than 8 in 10 reckon it's one of the biggest challenges facing the country. Now, this campaign is called Where's Your Head At? And it aims to tackle this by making it easier for people to talk about their mental health at work with colleagues trained to help you. We've had loads of support on this one. You're going to be hearing loads of great names and celebrity names talking about this. Among them, mental health campaigner and friend of the programme, Natasha Devon MBE, who's working with Radio City Talk on the campaign and working with Mental Health Monday. She's told us what impact a mental health first aider could have.
People think that it impacts how they are seen professionally and how capable they are of doing their job. That's completely wrong.
So there's loads of different angles to this one and loads of different aspects. We'll be covering it over the course of the week and we'll, of course, wrap it up as part of the Mental Health Monday podcast. Among those people who've been sharing their stories, Lynn Collins from the Northwest TUC. She says, and she agrees, that currently within workplaces, there's not enough support for workers.
I think there's two things. Yes, I think there's not enough support at work. So when people become ill at work, they often have to leave work. But also there's not enough support to get people who have suffered with mental health problems back into work or into work in the first place. So I think to tackle the problem, you have to do that at both ends. And mental health first aiders are obviously a really kind of key and important part of that. Anything that can help signpost in work or raise awareness around mental health issues, which are the two key roles of a mental health first aider, is really good. But there's a lot more needs to be done. So there's no point signposting someone to services if the services aren't available or aren't available quick enough. And there's no point raising awareness in the workplace if employers don't do anything to change some of the workplace situations that can either cause stress at work or add to the problem.
What's the fear if the situation isn't resolved, if there isn't more for mental health first aid workers in the workplace or colleges? These symptoms, these issues will simply go unchecked and maybe get worse as well.
They will. And if you liken it to some kind of physical health problem, if somebody kept cutting their foot on a desk at work, it'd be great to have a first aider sticking a sticking plaster on. But if it's happening time after time after time, then something more than a sticking plaster needs to be done about it. And what we often find is that in today's modern workplaces, with all the stresses that come with targets and cutbacks in staff and pressure of work, customer-facing roles where there's a high degree of pressure, all of those kind of environments can add to mental health problems for people who suffer them or can create them for some people. So it's all about tackling all of the issues. Great if we can give people immediate help and support through a first aider, but we also need to have the services outside of work and inside of work that give the long-term support.
And the workplace can be, in sometimes, as you said, a stressful environment, or if people are coming into work with their own issues, it's not necessarily the place to be to get your mind off things as well, if you've got this added pressure of work to add to the problems that you're already dealing with. But the fact that there will be someone there who you can go, right, I'm going to that, like very much like an appointment or something like that, not too far away. How much of a difference will it make that instant sort of access?
Well, we say about our union safety reps in work that you'll never know how many lives they've saved by their actions to make the workplace safer. And it's a little bit like that with mental health first aiders. I suppose we'll never know how many people they've saved by the immediate advice they've given, the signposting they've given, the non-judgmental way in which they're trained to listen to people and give them support, the way in which they're trained not to step beyond their professional boundaries but to make sure that they refer people onto the appropriate services. All of those things are really important. And, it's kind of hard to get tangible stats about this, but we do know from the people we've trained as trade unions in this role that there are massive improvements at work, because the whole raising of awareness, just by having a mental health first aider in a workplace, raises the awareness and destigmatises the issue of mental health. So just by an employer and a union sitting down and saying, we're going to have these people around the workplace, that takes away a lot of the stigma for people, and people will feel that a workplace is somewhere where they can be open about their health.
Do you think it can save lives?
Absolutely can save lives, but it can only save lives with all of the other parts of the support being in place.
What would be an effective measure to bring in then, do you think? Would it be a case of, because it's, I suppose every business, every workplace needs to sign up to something to really get the message across? I suppose it's like a domino effect, really, isn't it?
There is, and there's lots of things out there like workplace wellbeing charters, mental health at work charters. There's lots of those things out there. I mean, I will obviously say that a workplace with trade unions is able to handle this a lot better, because you've got staff representation who can work with management and find the right solutions for that workplace. Because what's right for an ice cream factory mightn't be right for a hospital or a school. The solutions might be different. The risks at work might be different. So having that day-to-day dialogue between employees and their representatives and employers is absolutely vital. And that is, I think, something that we should be positively promoting.
That's Lynn Collins from the North West TUC speaking to our reporter Adam Phillips. So the Where's Your Head At campaign is a national campaign. You'll be hearing about it here on Radio City Talk, but also across our network of stations. You'll be hearing it and reading about it in magazines like Heat and Grazia, some of the national radio stations as well, and magazines like Empire magazine as well, which looks at the movie world. And it's all about mental health first aid, a campaign which will improve the mental health of the nation by ensuring employers look after the well-being of their workforce. Now, there's a petition that goes along with this one. I'm just going to give you the website now. We'll give this a couple more mentions throughout the course of the week. where'syourheadat.org. That's where'syourheadat, all one word, .org, and you'll see the page there with the Where's Your Head At branding. Let's change the law to protect our mental health. Included in there is a guide to what a mental health first aider, person in the workplace or college who has been trained to identify, understand and help someone who may be experiencing a mental health issue. There's also a series of links to places that you can go if you want to talk to somebody about issues that you're experiencing within your own life. There's also a guide to Natasha Devon MBE, who's been on the programme before, talking through the work that she does as well. And there's also a video that you can watch as well. It's all on the website, where'syourheadat.org. If you're sort of active within your workplace in regard to speaking with managers and getting on board with organisations like this and issues like this, head there. All the information that you need, where'syourheadat.org. Check it out. It's something we're going to continue to talk about here in the home of Rock, Sport and Talk, Radio City Talk. One of the other things we're touching on is with celebrities and people you may have heard of, how they relax, what they do to make themselves better prepared to take on the world from a mental health point of view. Among those people, the leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn. Let's hear from him now. So this campaign has got, indeed, the backing of the Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn.
I'm glad you're launching a mental health campaign, and I fully support the mental health charities that do so much work and those that work in mental health. 1 in 4 of us will suffer a mental health crisis of some sort during our lifetime. Many of us can get through it with help and support and love and kindness and friendship. Others need help. Cutting mental health services is not the way to do it. Individually, we need to give space to each other and individually need to put everything you do in perspective. I relax by doing lots of different things. I enjoy running, I enjoy cycling, I enjoy digging my allotment, and I enjoy reading books that are often nothing to do with my day-to-day work, which is obviously an extremely pressurised job. So you just need to put things into perspective, but above all, it's about being kind to each other and recognising that each other can be under stress at different times and listening to people, not shouting at them.
One of the big things that this campaign is calling for is mental health first training in every workplace and every college. Is that something that you could support?
Absolutely excellent idea. yesterday I had a very long discussion with a senior police officer about the role of the police in mental health services. The police should not really be involved in mental health services, but they often pick up people who are in the midst of a crisis. And in workplaces, we all get into a crisis. And young people, particularly children and students, often find it hard to talk to somebody they perceive to be in authority about a mental health stress they're suffering and talk to somebody else. Having trained and identified people in the workplace who you can go to is very, very important because, suicide is the biggest killer of young men across the UK. Much of that comes from mental health stress that hasn't been diagnosed or hasn't been supported, or the stigma was so great they couldn't talk about it.
Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn there speaking to various reporters we've got from within our organisation who are doing some great work on this one. We're launching it in Mental Health Awareness Week, and it's something we'll continue to talk about. The website again and the petition to make sure that the government can actually do something about this. Where'syourheadat.org. That's where'syourheadat.org. There's loads of information on there, including links to what the campaign's all about, the petition itself, the organisations who are on board supporting it, and Natasha Devon, who is one of our key colleagues when it comes to making this whole thing work. It's Mental Health Awareness Week. Where'syourheadat.org. It's Mental Health Monday on Radio City Talk.
Mental Health Monday on Radio City Talk with Mick Coyle.
Radio City Talk.
Okay, very pleased to say on Mental Health Monday this week, we're joined in the studio by Phil Bridges. Now, Phil is one of the people behind the mindmap.co.uk, which is this brilliant new resource, actually. It's got 1,001 different angles to it. We're going to have that conversation now with Phil. Great to see you, Phil. Thank you for your time. The mindmap.co.uk, people go there, they'll find out 1,001 things in regard to mental health. Just tell us about the idea, how it first came around.
So we're a mental health social enterprise, and I suppose our main aim is to normalise mental health and signpost young people towards services. And it came about really through my own experiences of mental health. Someone who has to work really hard to stay mentally well. And I just found from kind of searching high and low for different mental health provisions, it is quite difficult. There's a lot of disparate advice around there, and we kind of wanted to bring that all together and make it easier for people to navigate towards services and resources. Also, my dad was a mental health nurse for 35 years, so I guess that influenced me a little bit as well. And then I think, divorcing my own experiences from it, it's plain for everyone to see there is a mental health crisis in the UK, and there's a lot of stats out there. 1 in 4 people are suffering from mental health at any one time, and I'm just passionate about trying to affect a change in this area, really.
Obviously, and I know Jake Mills, who does a lot of stuff on the programme as well, with the Hub of Hope, which is sort of creating a central point that then feeds off in 1,001 different directions. Yours works on a kind of similar basis, but draws people in at the same time. Was it always going to be a digital solution, do you think, to some of the issues in regard to signposting and people being able to find provision?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of trying to achieve our aims in a number of ways. So we've got the online magazine, as you've mentioned, but then we kind of do workshops as well, and we put on events and exhibitions. So we kind of start with the aims, and then there's different ways of achieving those aims. So at the moment, we've got an exhibition on at Constellations, and we've interviewed 7 musicians and photographed them about, and we've asked them about how they stay mentally well, so people can go and see that. And then we're doing a series of media and mental health workshops with young people at Merseyside Youth Association in the summer. So it's kind of online and offline, to be honest. Yeah. And
you've got kind of like, forgive me because I'm not very cool, but you've got like cool people, like Blossom, so I understand a cool band, right?
They're quite cool. But then we've got like Will Young and people like that
he's
as
not
well.
Cool.
Do you know what I mean? So we're, and to be honest, we're really, really, really mindful of not being this elitist kind of like hip website, really, because everyone's got mental health, and we want to just kind of reach, as many young people as we can between sort of the ages of 16 and 34 and beyond. But yeah, and we've interviewed Sleaford Mods as well. We've interviewed Leighton Baines. We've interviewed Simon Rimmer, Katie Piper. So there is a real range of people on there. And everyone's got, really interesting stories to tell about, as I say, how they stay mentally well, and and kind of stuff around what they're listening to, what they're watching, because you don't want to make it too heavy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think that feeds into the idea that actually you can have, mindfulness, you can have mental well-being, but you're not constantly in some sort of like yoga state. You can be listening to music. You can be enjoying TV box sets. You can be going to the cinema. You can be, out and about with your mates. That there's a lifestyle that comes with living well outside of, just, being mindful of maybe issues that might be on the rise.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of about having a toolkit, really. And, from going for a big walk in the park with a podcast on to taking medication, there's different ways of staying mentally well. And I just think it's really good to get people talking about the types of things they do to stay mentally well, to then inspire other people to try and do the same. So from eating well to, I don't know, exercising, it might be medication, just whatever it is that you feel you need to get you well, it is fine. And it's just about us kind of navigating people towards those different things that are available to them.
And when you've got somebody like Leighton Baines, who is a footballer, he's also an intelligent bloke as well, and you approach him to get involved as well. First and foremost, was he like, oh yeah, I'd love to do that, or do you have to kind of persuade these sorts of individuals? We've kind of had a number of different footballers on the programme before, and you often get a different reaction as to whether or not they think they should speak, shouldn't speak, are willing to speak, or sometimes really open to the whole idea of having a conversation.
Yeah, I think with Leighton, because he's talked about mental health before, and he's a cultural chap, he's really into his like photography and music and stuff. So I just got in touch with him on Instagram, and he replied, which was amazing. He said, why don't we meet in Filter and Fox, have a coffee and chat through what you want to do. I thought I'd turn up and there'd be like bodyguards and that, and it was just him with a baseball cap and being dead supportive. And and he agreed to come to our lunch, which happened in March, and we did an in-conversation with him on mental health in football. And yeah, he's just a really nice, down-to-earth guy, really, and it was amazing that he came and opened up about his experiences. So.
We've got Phil Bridges with us from the Mind Map, themindmap.co.uk. If you want to find out more information there, in the intro to the About section, it says, mental health problems affect millions of us each year. Many of us don't know where to turn when it strikes. We become prisoners of depression, stress and anxiety. You go to parties and fail to have fun, see friends and fail to connect, gain no pleasure from activities you used to love, overwhelmed, you feel like you are losing yourself. Phil, can I ask you, are those your words? Is that something that you thought, that's my experience? Are you giving away something of yourself in that introduction?
A little bit, yeah. I think it's something that I hope people can relate to, that, that lack of sort of connection when if you're suffering from depression or anxiety or whatever it may be. So I feel like that's a really important part of getting well, is to connect, talk to people, exercise, eat well. It's just all these different elements that come together, really.
Yeah, that idea of going to parties and failing to have fun, seeing friends and failing to connect, that's one of the things which, when we started saying it 2-3 years ago, people were like amazed that you were actually allowed to say that. Like, it was like an unforgivable thing to say that when you go to parties, you don't always have fun, or you can be in a huge group of friends and actually feel quite lonely. That's been one of the epiphanies that I know a lot of people have had over the last couple of years, that loads of people feel like that. And that's actually a really normal way to feel for a lot of people.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think there's different versions of yourself. And some days you're a smaller version of yourself, and other days you're a bigger version of yourself. And it can change day to day, really. But
in terms of the work you're doing with Merseyside Youth Association, have they been really open in terms of how they want you to speak? Or have you kind of gone in there under, certain structures in terms of what they want you to say, what they want you to say to young people?
Well, yeah, they've been really supportive, and they have got an existing group of young people who attend their mental health workshops every couple of weeks. And we just kind of approached them and said we'd like to do some media workshops with them to raise awareness around mental health. And so we go out and about and we interview young people for this series called We Love Life, and it's kind of like a street style angle, but instead of asking the people like what are they wearing at the moment, we're asking them, what do you do to stay mentally well? So we thought it'd be really nice to get some of the young people at Merseyside Youth Association to come out with us, because it's kind of upskilling them in terms of like becoming photographers and journalists, and also becoming part of the process of getting that mental health conversation going. So, they were really open to that. So we're going to be doing that in the summer. So it'll be really nice as well, because obviously with us being a media outlet, it's not kind of pretend work. They could take a photo, interview someone, and it'll actually go live. And then in 5, 6, 7 years' time, whatever it may be, they've actually got something for their portfolio. So, yeah, we think that'll work really nicely.
Brilliant stuff. In terms of the mind map itself, and if people go to the website and start looking for things, I've had a look at it myself. It's a really sort of well-designed website. It looks really smart. In terms of how you've designed it to be sort of navigation-friendly for people to find certain things, how have you gone about making that work?
So we've worked with Citra Suite, who are our design agency, and then we worked with a graphic designer in London on the branding, because it's really important to us to make it like really engaging and to have a good feel. Yeah, and I think we just try to make it as clear as possible, you know, like really clear headings across the top, and yeah, I think I'm glad you like it. So
it looks cool. It looks like a cool website. What are the plans in terms of the expansion of it? Obviously, you know, you'll speak to more people, you'll put more information up there, you get more young people on board as well, doing the kind of sort of the Vox Pop stuff that you were touching on there. How do you see things moving on in the next couple of years?
Yeah, so we're going to start delivering mental health first aid training to organisations, you know, education organisations, workplaces, and that'll teach people how to spot the symptoms of mental health issues and offer initial help and guide a person towards support. They're a great organisation. I don't know if you've heard of Mental Health First Aid England, but yeah, they do some great work, and I think they want to train like 1 in 10 people to be mental health first aiders. So we're really big advocates of that, and that'll be our product, if you like. And I think that'll help us to sustain. Obviously, at the moment, we've been surviving on grant funding. We were lucky enough to get a bit of funding from the National Lottery and from the Liverpool One Foundation. But yeah, I think it's really important for us to become sustainable through trading as well.
Yeah, and there's a lot of a drive at the moment for not only people to get sort of more mindful about this, but also workplaces looking to come on board and thinking, well, actually, we've heard a rumour that actually if you do take care of your staff, productivity increases, staff well-being increases, sick days decrease, and so on and so forth. So that mental health first aid, what would it look like? What would it be like within an office environment? Wouldn't be someone sat there with a siren on their head, flashing lights spinning around, saying, come and speak to me and tell me your feelings?
No. I think what would happen is initially a person might go to their HR manager and say they're struggling, and then the HR manager would refer them to the mental health first aider in that organisation, who would be trained to spot symptoms, as I say, signpost, talk to them compassionately. Just basic things, really, that when you speak to anyone about mental health first aid, they go, oh, that's a good idea. Do you know what I mean? It's just like it's just a common sense solution, really, and it's like I don't see how you could really be in charge of young people and not know how to deliver mental health first aid. It just seems like quite a basic thing that everyone should learn how to do. And
it strikes you as sort of common, sort of decent business sense as well, that if you are a small company with 1 or 2 members of staff where, you know, staff absence can be huge. If you're a huge company where, you know, any number of people taking time off disrupts your logarithms and everything in between, everybody can come on board with this. Small businesses, big businesses, all kinds of different organisations.
Yeah, definitely. I think the way we're going to run ours is we'll have, you know, bigger organisations would go in, book a room. You could get 10 line managers in there. But then we could also book a room and get people from different organisations. So if you're a small company and you only want to put 1 or 2 people on the course, it's a 2-day course, there'd be that option as well. So yeah, I'd encourage anyone really to get in touch with it. You know, it's just phil@themindmap.co.uk if anyone wanted to speak to me about mental health first aid training.
Brilliant stuff. Phil, thank you for your time. Really appreciate you coming on the programme today. Themindmap.co.uk. I'd just urge people to go and take a look and have a look around, listen to some of the interviews, look at the pictures as well. Good photography on there. Is that something that you're working there too?
Yeah, I stand there and interview the people while the photographer takes the pictures. So I guess I'm part of the process.
Brill. Themindmap.co.uk. Find out some more information. Phil Bridges, pleasure to get you on the programme today. Thanks for joining us on Mental Health Monday.
Cheers, mate.
Mental Health Monday with Mick Coyle.
Radio City Talk.
It's Mental Health Monday. It's Radio City Talk. It's Mental Health Awareness Week. All this week, people are doing their best to talk about mental health in an open and honest way as they can and make people, as many people, as aware as they can of what mental health is all about. It's something that we've been doing for many years here on this programme, something we will continue to do as well. But it's worth mentioning that Mental Health Awareness Week is out and about as other people come on board. We're going to speak to somebody now who works very much within this field. She's registered with the British Association of Counsellors and Psychotherapists. She's an accredited counsellor, and she has expertise in issues like workplace stress and counselling on suicidal thoughts. Claire Slaney joins us on Mental Health Monday. Claire, thank you for your time.
That's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me on.
Now, do you find Mental Health Awareness Week, do you find that sometimes people, 51 weeks of the year aren't that interested in what you do, and then maybe for 1 week in the year they suddenly go, oh, actually, it's quite interesting. Seems like quite important work you're doing here, Claire.
Yes, you put your finger on it. It needs a theme for people to really take an interest in the subject. But so many people are suffering from mental health problems.
Absolutely, and that's something we try and reflect on the programme as much as we can, and we try and kind of look at what those trends are and why they're happening. Is there anything that you're seeing in particular, things that you've witnessed over the last few years, changes in people, maybe changes in attitude in regard to mental health? Because you're really on the front line with all this.
People are easier talking about other people's mental health, I think. So we're all got used to talking about mental health this and suicide in men and, themes that run throughout the media all the time. But talking about our own mental health is still taboo, I think.
Is that something which can change? Is there a simple step, or does it require, a counsellor? Does it require sitting down with a psychotherapist or whoever it might be to have those conversations?
No, I think there are many other ways that people can become more comfortable talking about their own mental health. There's lots of resources online. Facebook and Twitter are absolutely full of self-help groups and other organisations like Anxiety UK or Mind or the Samaritans. I think there's a group called the Blurt Foundation. I think it's the Blurt Foundation. They're very good, and you don't have to talk to a soul. The thing about doing face-to-face interaction is that you've got to be able to trust the person to listen to you and not freak out and probably not give you any advice. And I wonder if some people find it hard to access that kind of relationship.
I wonder whether or not people have a fear about going to see somebody or talking to somebody, and indeed, maybe that thing that you touched on there, they suggest advice. Well, why don't you try this? Why don't you try doing things like this? Because people, find themselves in their own mental health bubble for whatever reason, and actually, the idea of getting out of that bubble can be a very frightening prospect.
Yes, well, it still has a load of stigma, and I think coming to a counsellor has a lot of stigma. It's almost as if you're admitting that you've lost control of something. I think you might be demonstrating that you're quite wise, that you need extra help, that you can't get from your friends or your family. Just as you'd go to a GP if you had something go wrong with you that your pharmacist couldn't help with.
Yeah, it's interesting that, isn't it? Because actually, how many times do you hear people say, I can't do such and such a thing, why not? I've got a physio session or something like that, and people react in a different way. They go, oh, right, well, is there something wrong? And then you go, yeah, it's my knee's a little bit wonky or whatever it would be. But actually, you wouldn't hear that. Oh, no, sorry, I can't come out. I've got a counselling session. Oh, really? Is there something wrong? Yeah, I suffer from, stress and anxiety. It's not part of what you would seem to be sort of the templates of everyday conversation that we have in British life.
Absolutely, and it's kind of silly because 1 in 4 of us will experience mental health problems in our lifetime. 1/3 of people of working age are suffering right now from stress, from workplace stress in particular. So it's enormously widespread. I think sometimes therapists can be in a bit of a bubble. We talk about it with great ease, and sometimes we can forget that it is really stigmatizing and difficult for people who aren't in the profession to admit to themselves, actually, something's really wrong and I've got to do something about it.
Yeah. What's the feeling that you get when you get somebody, and I don't know if this is me completely misjudging what sessions like the ones that you put on are all about, but when you get a breakthrough within a session, when you get somebody open up about a particular issue, or you get to the heart of a particular maybe mental health issue, that must be rewarding from your point of view, but also must require a great deal of sort of mining work, asking the right questions and pressing the right buttons, but in the right way.
In the right way. The relief that most people experience in the first session of sitting in a room that is private and confidential, and nobody's going to open the door and say, sorry, I didn't, and they can just say what they want to say for 50 minutes or however long the session is. The relief of being able to do that, just being able to whisper a secret, I suppose, can give enormous relief. And for the therapist not to laugh, not to be shocked, not to say, well, you ought to do this and you ought to do that, but just to hear it and accept that that is the way that things are. Just that can be phenomenal.
I imagine as well you must have heard many different things and many different reasons why people might find themselves having to come and see somebody like yourself. Do you still get shocked by those moments? You say that nobody's going to laugh or talk down to somebody once they reveal things, but do you ever find yourself thinking, oh, wow, like no wonder this person maybe has suffered as a result of this particular incident, because it might be particularly horrific, harrowing, going way back. It might be a crime that's been committed against the individual, or a terrible tragedy, or a series of events which have conspired against them. There must be 1,001 different things that you hear.
There are, and we are trained to keep that shock to ourselves as much as possible. I think clients actually are much better at knowing what therapists are thinking. They can read us pretty well. But even so, most of us will have worked in something to do with trauma during our training. We often work as volunteers in domestic violence agencies or victim support or rape crisis, where we can hear the most shocking things as students quite early on in our work. And so we develop a sort of a discipline where we are unlikely to be shocked by most of what we hear. And when we are shocked by something that we hear, we're going to say that's really impactful. That sounds pretty dreadful. I hope that none of us would say, oh, I can't cope with that,
No, absolutely.
We'd say, that sounds horrific, and be upfront about it.
We've got Claire Slaney with us on Mental Health Monday, talking through the work that she does as a counsellor. She's as a therapist. She's an expert as well in workplace stress and also counselling on suicide thoughts. Of course, that conversation that we've just had follows on from people who found their way to you as a result of maybe an incident that's occurred to them in everyday life. But occasionally life conspires against you. And I guess workplace stress is a good example of this one, Claire, where people... Not many people take a job because they absolutely have to. They might have to take on, they might think, well, I need this job to earn some money. But people tend to have selected the type of job maybe they think they might enjoy, or maybe they think that they might be able to cope with. But then workplace stress, I guess, comes from the realities of that job and the pressures that might come from a particular line of work. We all have workplace stress as well. When does it become, do you think, a problem that might require intervention?
Yeah. I think that the things about workplace stress and money are really intimately tied up these days. It used to be that money was a different problem to workplace stress, but now a lot of people go to work because they have to, because they must try and pay the rent or the mortgage. And, housing costs used to be a third of your income. There are an awful lot more of that now for many of us. So that's anxiety about paying the bills and having to work are going hand in hand now. And even people who are really well paid, management consultants and people in that bracket, they are working the most phenomenal hours. They're working 60, 70 hours a week. Standard. They're expected to work it. It's not unusual. It's not an unusual week. That's how much they're expected to work. It's a kind of servitude for them. They're very well paid, but they don't have the time to enjoy their money. So those two things, with austerity and the pressure of work caused by the internet. You can get emails all day long now and texts all day long. And so people are working when they are not at work. They're doing a little bit of work at home because they've got emails. And all of that eats into your time and your well-being. When we're not at work, we need to be not at work. We need to be doing something different. And so many of us identify with our job title. So one of the first things that you'll ask someone when you meet them is, and what do you do for a living? It's so intensely bound up with our own identity that not having a job is even more stressful than having a job, and that's stressful enough.
Yeah, and actually that's the interesting thing, that actually, people presume that, well, as long as you get paid all right, you can cope. But actually, if you're on £150,000 a year and the decisions that you're making actually affect 40 or 50 people, each earning £15,000 a year. But actually, if you make the wrong decision, they all lose their job. You might still keep yours, but then there are pressures on throughout. Equally, if you don't have that job, you feel the pressure of thinking, should I have that job? Even though if you do get that job, it might not make you happy in the first place because there are so many other things going on. Claire, today we're launching this campaign about mental health first aiders in classrooms and offices, and trying to get people talking about this idea. That's the sort of the first step, the first aid step. You see things from the other end as well, counselling on suicidal thoughts, people who are maybe much further along the line. We've heard a lot about suicide this week as a result of the work done through Coronation Street and the Aidan storyline as well. Suicidal thoughts. The thing that always strikes me when I speak to people who have been through and attempted suicide is the incredible vulnerability to those individuals, both just before but also just after, the vulnerability that they have, the protection that they need, maybe from themselves, but also from the world around them, which maybe in their eyes is conspiring against them. It must be tremendously difficult dealing with somebody and counselling somebody who has been to such a dark place to try and take them back out of that place. And I don't know if you then try and turn them around and get them to look again at the situation they found themselves in a new light, or whether or not that might be too difficult for some.
I think you've put your finger on it when you talk about vulnerability. The shame that so many people feel when they've attempted suicide can be absolutely crushing. And it's a really unpleasant state of affairs because, of course, if they've got people around them like family or close friends, the family and close friends can feel quite betrayed. Why didn't you come to us? Why did you let us down? There's a lot of really heightened feelings and all sorts of contradictory feelings. And the person who's failed at suicide, can feel absolutely consumed with shame. There's a really wonderful place in London, and it's the only place in the UK that deals with people who are very seriously thinking about killing themselves. It's called the Maytree, and there should be a Maytree in each town in the UK. You can just go there for 3 days. Nobody's going to bother you. You can talk with someone if you want to, but what you get is 3 days out of the world, 3 days just to be by yourself without anybody bothering you. You get fed, you get listened to, and so on and so on. And you can just get your head together. You can just talk with somebody who isn't worried about you. Do you know what I mean? It's not like a family member. So, of course, people in the Maytree want to stop people killing themselves, but they're not invested in it. And that sort of non-judgmental, empathic care, if more people had access to that to begin with, I think there'd be a lot less suicide.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. When you deal with these particular cases, can you picture in your own mind a timeline which that individual has gone down to the point where they've thought that suicide is the best option for them for whatever reason, and actually you can almost skip back 6 months, a year, 6 years, 10 years, 25 years, where you could say, well, if there'd have been an intervention at that point, then that timeline would never have existed, that timeline would have been, going off in a different direction.
Yeah. I think it's different for men and women, speaking very, very broadly. Men don't like to say that they can't deal with something, and so they'll deny that there's a problem, either with money or a job, sort of status things. And they'll just go, yeah, I can deal with this, I've got lots of debt and I can deal with it, rather than saying, I don't need to get this item that I really want, or that is high status, or that I'm now in so much debt that I can't handle it, and I need to seek advice. seeking advice and saying, I'm beyond what I can cope with now. I need help. Just as you would go and get financial advice, just as you would go and you wouldn't start knocking a hole in the wall when you want to do some housing alterations. You'd go and get an expert to give you some advice. And it's saying, yes, I've got a problem that I think some men miss out on. I think with some women, they just want to soldier on. There's a lot more anxiety involved, and they want just quietly to keep their head down. But for both groups, the pressure builds up and up and up until it becomes entirely unmanageable. And then the only way out seems to be to kill themselves.
It's I mean, suicide is one of those things where even when we talk about mental health and people get more comfortable in terms of sharing their own thoughts about whether or not they're down, whether or not they feel a little bit down, whether they're having a rough few weeks, a rough few months as well, there still seems to be that stigma around suicide itself, and actually that an individual might have gone to that place for, their own personal reasons. I mentioned that idea of sort of showing people or turning people sort of back toward that suicidal moment. Is that something that takes place within counselling, or do you move them away from that moment? Do you ever show them back to that moment and say, well, how do you feel differently to how you felt now? Is there a danger that you trigger something in going back to a particular moment when it's something as personal, a moment as suicide?
I think you've got to be very careful and treat each person as an individual. There's not a prescribed way of doing this. It might be that you've worked with somebody for a period of time and you've built up a relationship of trust, and the critical moment has gone. The person no longer feels suicidal. They've got resources and other things in place that means that they are much less likely to think about being suicidal. And then it's good to say, let's think back to where you were 6 months ago, 6 weeks ago, whenever it was, and look at the progress that you've made. Look what is now in place to help you live better. Because I think the important thing to say is that most people who think about killing themselves or try and kill themselves actually don't want to die at all. They just want to live better. And it seems impossible to do that.
Claire, just from your tone of voice, I can tell you're a therapist, by the way. I can, and I think our listeners will appreciate that as well, that you have a natural sort of tone to your voice. I don't know if that's something you were born with or something you developed through your training. You're very easy to talk to, and you seem to find talking to be a very comfortable thing. I almost feel relaxed talking to you now.
Oh, good. Mates rates.
Claire, thank you for speaking to us. I'm hoping, and this is one of those things where, as a working through as a therapist and a counsellor, it's one of those things where we hope that in the future you're not so busy. But I know that it's almost that point where it feels within the world and society that we're in that people like yourself are going to get much busier before we're able to get to a point where you might be able to put your feet up a little bit. But actually, in you becoming very, very busy, as long as that's good for you and your own mental health and well-being, that's going to be a good thing for the rest of society. That actually coming seeing somebody like yourself, and people can find loads of different counsellors through the counselling directory, that they can then change the way that they view the world, that they can normalise that idea of counselling, and we can change the stigma around the idea of stepping in through somebody's door and talking to them for an hour or for 50 minutes or 20 minutes like you or I have had today. So fingers crossed for the future on this one. It feels to me like things are changing. Things are changing slowly, but maybe hopefully things are changing for the better.
I hope so too, and it's been a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you for joining us on Mental Health Monday. That's Claire Slaney, details of which you can find through the counselling directory, counselling-directory.org.uk. They're also up and about on social media.
Mental Health Monday on Radio City Talk with Mick Coyle.
Radio City Talk.